I came home early the evening I found out. There was a storm coming. You could feel it in the air, that heavy stillness right before the rain. And the house was quiet in a way our house was never quiet. I'm going to tell you what I found upstairs, but I'm not going to dwell on it, because the moment itself is the least important part of this whole story. What matters is what I did with it. Her name was Diane. We'd been married 9 years. And the man in our bedroom, the man I saw reflected in the mirror through the gap in the door, that was Marcus. My best friend since we were 12 years old. The best man at my wedding. The godfather to the daughter Diane, and I had once hoped to have. The person, outside of my own wife, I had trusted more than anyone alive. I stood at the top of those stairs, and the world went very quiet and very clear. Here's the thing most people get wrong about a moment like that. Everything in you screams to act, to throw the door open, to make it a scene, a fight, a story with shouting in it. And I felt all of that. My hand was shaking, but underneath the shaking, something colder and steadier was already awake, and it asked me one simple question. If I burst through that door right now, what exactly do I win? A fight, a mess, the satisfaction of 3 loud seconds, and then a lifetime of being the man whose wife left him for his best friend. The man people whispered about, the loud, broken, predictable end to the story they were already writing about me. No. So I did something that I think saved my life. I backed away, quietly, one stair at a time, the way I'd come up. I let myself out the front door. I closed it softly behind me, and I walked out into the first drops of the rain, got into my car, and sat there with my hands on the wheel, perfectly calm, while everything I thought I knew rearranged itself. I did not feel like a victim. I want you to understand that. I felt like a man who had just been handed a piece of information his opponents didn't know he had. And in my experience, that is the most powerful position there is. Because here is what I do, and what I'd quietly built my whole life on. I run a business, a consulting firm, small, but the kind where the work is the relationships. Where clients don't hire the company, they hire the person. I'd spent 15 years building something that looked, from the outside, like a tidy little empire. And Marcus had spent the last few of those years working his way closer and closer to the center of it. I didn't see it then. I saw it over the next 3 weeks. Because once I knew to look, I couldn't stop seeing. I said nothing, you understand. That was the first rule, the only rule that mattered at the start. I went home that night, after they'd both gone, after the house was empty, and when Diane came in an hour later, smelling of someone else's evening. I asked her how her day was, and she told me a small, smooth lie, and I smiled, and I said that sounded nice. And I watched something flicker across her face. Relief. She thought she'd gotten away with it. She had no idea. She just told me everything I needed to know about how easily she could look me in the eye and lie. That was the night the cold thing in me fully woke up, and it didn't want to fight. It wanted the truth. All of it. Before I did anything at all. So I started doing what I do for a living. I gathered information quietly from the edges. And what I found over those 3 weeks was so much bigger than an affair that the affair became almost a footnote. This had not started 3 weeks ago. It had started years ago. Marcus, it turned out, had been moving toward this for a long time. I found it in the small things first. The way he'd inserted himself in my business to help back when I was overloaded. The clients he'd offered to take some weight off with. The introductions he'd quietly redirected. He had been, for 2 years, slowly making himself look indispensable to my firm. Positioning himself as the natural person to step in if anything ever happened to me. And Diane was the final piece. Not a passion, a move. Take the wife, break the man, and step into the life he'd already half hollowed out from the inside. He didn't want a night with Diane. He wanted to become me. I even found the shape of the endgame. Diane had been quietly talking to a divorce attorney, the same way the cheaters in every one of these stories always do. The plan was clean, on paper. She would file. She'd take half. The house, the savings, a share of the business she'd contributed nothing to but was legally entitled to claim. The shock would land on me all at once, after the papers were filed, when I was too blindsided to do anything but sign. And Marcus would be standing right there to catch what fell. My wife, my clients, My name on the door. The whole life transferred while I was still reeling. They thought they were years ahead of me, so I made my decision. And it was the opposite of everything they expected. I wasn't going to fight her for any of it. I was going to give it to him. All of it. Exactly as he'd asked. And I was going to do it smiling. Because I had finally understood the one thing Marcus, for all his patience, had never understood. He thought my life was a set of objects you could take. The house, the clients, the title. He thought if he held the things I held, he would become what I was. He had no idea that none of it was the thing. The thing was never transferable. And I was about to let him learn that with his whole life. Here's what I did. And I did all of it quietly, legally, without a single raised voice. First, Diane. When she finally sat me down, weeks later, papers ready, braced for my devastation, I didn't fight. I didn't even argue. I agreed to everything before she finished asking. She wanted the house. Take the house. The savings? Split them today. She sat there, primed for a war, and I simply handed it over. I watched her confusion. People who've planned for a battle don't know what to do when the other side opens the gate. She left that conversation with everything she'd schemed for, and a strange, hollow look like a woman who'd won a game and couldn't understand why it didn't feel like winning. But the business was where Marcus had really aimed. And the business was where he learned what it was worth. Because a firm like mine isn't a building or a logo. It's me. The clients I'd spent 15 years earning didn't have contracts with a company. They had trust in a man. So I didn't fight Marcus for the firm either. I let him have the shell of it. The office, the name, the furniture, the half-share Diane signed over to him in the divorce, the title he'd wanted for years. I let him stand in the center of the empire he'd schemed his way into. And then I simply, quietly left. I called my clients, every one, and told them, calmly and without a word against anyone, that I was starting fresh, on my own, and I'd love to keep working with them. To a person, they came with me. Of course they did. They were never the firm's. They were mine. Marcus inherited a beautiful office with nothing inside it. A throne in an empty room. Within months, the thing he'd spent years capturing had quietly evaporated in his hands, because the one ingredient that made it real had calmly walked out the door and started again 2 miles away. And there was one more thing, the thing I'm most at peace with. Marcus had a wife of his own. Her name was Sarah, and she was, as far as I ever knew, a genuinely good person who had no idea what her husband was. To take Diane, Marcus had to leave Sarah. He'd been planning to, once the dominoes fell. And I made one decision that wasn't about revenge at all. Before any of it broke open, I made sure Sarah understood, gently and privately, exactly what kind of season was coming for her. Early enough that she could protect herself, talk to her own attorney, and walk out with her dignity and her share intact, instead of being blindsided the way I was supposed to be. I didn't do it to hurt Marcus. I did it because no one had given me that warning, and I wasn't going to let another decent person take that hit if I could help it. So when the dust settled, here is where everyone stood. Marcus got Diane, a woman who had already proven to both of us now exactly how she handles a marriage when something better seems to come along. He got an empty office with my old name on it and none of my clients. He lost Sarah, who left clear-eyed and protected. And he lost me, the one real friendship of his life, which he'd apparently decided, somewhere along the way, was worth less than my client list. Diane got Marcus, and a house, and half of savings, and a man who had just demonstrated, in detail, that he was willing to spend years betraying his best friend and abandoning his wife to get what he wanted. She traded a husband who never lied to her for a man whose entire nature was the lie. I imagine that's a quiet thing to live with. And me? I kept my clients. I kept my work. I kept my name, the real one, the one that lives in people's trust, not on a door. I rebuilt the whole thing in under a year, cleaner and better than before. And I kept the one thing neither of them could ever touch. I never once lowered myself to their level. I never shouted. I never schemed against an innocent person. I never became the thing that was done to me. People ask if I feel like I lost. I didn't lose my wife in that bedroom. I'd lost her long before, I just didn't have the date yet. And I didn't lose my best friend the day I found him there either. I lost him in all those quiet years. He was hollowing me out while smiling at my dinner table. The bedroom was just where the bill finally came due. It's raining tonight. Same kind of storm as that evening, all those months ago. And if you've ever stood at the top of your own stairs, with your whole life rearranging itself, and felt that scream rising in your chest, I'll tell you the one thing I learned. The loudest revenge is almost always the weakest. The man kicking down the door has already lost control. But the quiet one, the one who backs down the stairs and closes the door softly and simply stops holding up a house that was never theirs to begin with. He's the one you should never, ever underestimate. I didn't take anything from them. I just let them have exactly what they asked for, and I let them find out what it was worth.